Hello, happy Thanksgiving, and welcome to the Matchup Show presented by Unibet. I'm Shelby Cassesse in for Missy Matthews. A big AFC North matchup for the Steelers this Sunday in Cincinnati. Kickoff at 1 o'clock. The Bengals taking the first meeting between the two teams. So let's chat about what the Steelers need to do to end up on the positive side of this matchup this time around. I'll bring in our panelists now to discuss this with us. Joining us now is Bob Labriola. He's the editor of Steelers Digest and with Steelers.com. Craig Wolfley, former Steelers guard and with the radio broadcast team. Finally, Arthur Moats, former Steelers linebacker and contributor to Steelers Nation Radio. Guys, Joe Hayden, Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt not on the field against the Chargers on Sunday. A big presence missing there. Is it as simple as having those guys back this coming week to fix any of the miscues on defense? Mike Tomlin said that he's at least optimistic those guys will practice this week. Wolf, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Well, I don't think anything's as simple as just guys showing up to cure what ails the Steelers right at this moment. But, you've had guys out on all three levels, up front, the middle linebackers, and the deep third. And the fact is, it's going to help with communication. Number one is communication. I think Arthur will be talking about that. Is you got to have the communication, make sure people are able to get into the position, and then they know what they're doing. And that's going to be a big part of it. But certainly they've got to be able to up their game and be able to do the things that are necessary to make sure to secure victory, because just showing up is not going to be enough, that's for sure.
Arthur, what about for you? Those three guys, a big presence. Can the return of those guys potentially get this defense going again?
Yeah, I think with those three guys potentially returning, if they are healthy, which is the key part, if they're healthy, because if they're not, then they're just out there by name alone, and we will suffer the consequences of that. But those three guys being healthy, I mean, you can make a case that there are three of your top 5, 3 of your top 10 players on this team as a whole, let alone the defense. So yeah, they definitely help out, but they're not the cure-all, because there are some things that even when they return, we still have to, improve upon, tackling being one of them, communication being the second part. That's one of the things Keith Butler always talks about, and being a part of that defense. Mental errors and missed tackles will get you beat. And those are things that have continued to pop up, regardless of if, TJ, Joe, and Minkah have been available to this team or not.
Bob, if these three guys are available, what does it bring to this defense?
Well, it gives the Steelers a chance. I will agree with Craig and Arthur in that, just showing up doesn't fix everything. But last week, without those three guys, I mean, Mike Tomlin was in a high-stakes poker game, and he had no cards in his hand. I mean, you can only bluff so far, and then, it's time to fold them. So having those three guys gives the Steelers a chance. You are able to do some things or attempt to do some things that you couldn't even really think about against the Chargers and a quarterback like Justin Herbert. So, again, if you're going into battle, you want to have some weapons at your disposal, and having those three guys back on the defense gives the Steelers some weapons in that unit to go against Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
And Wolf, speaking of this defense, they've allowed the 8th most rushing yards in the league. Are you concerned about the defense's ability to stop the run from this point on?
Yeah, I would be. I mean, if I'm a member of that defensive unit, we certainly have not put up the sort of stats that gives Keith Butler and Mike Tomlin the ability to sleep nice and easy at night, because we just have not made the plays that we're capable of doing. But having said all that, just because it has been a problem doesn't mean it's always going to be so. And when you start to correct the problems and make this thing turn around, there are the horses in play, as both Bob and Arthur have pointed out, that they can get this thing going, and defensively speaking, be able to make those plays that they need. They've got to stop the runs. Get in there, lock out, play your gap, and then stay in your gap and wait for the play. When the play comes to you, you make the play, disengage and do it. So it's as simple as that, and yet it's as hard as that. And it's one of those conundrums that gives you that two-way that is a little bit difficult.
Arthur, let's talk about this pass rush a little bit. They're bringing 4 guys a lot of the time. Have they become too reliant on that? And do they need to bring the heat a little bit more from here on out?
Yeah, I do think, with the 4-man rush, it is a great weapon to have when it's working at a high level. And when you have guys like TJ Watt, Cam Hayward and of recently Alex Highsmith, you can get away with that, right? You can, have a 4-man rush and just trust that those guys are not only going to create pressure on the quarterback, but they're also going to contain the quarterback, which is something that without TJ Watt, we saw them struggle a little bit with. But in terms of what I want them to blitz a little bit more, it's the gift and the curse when it comes to blitzing, because yes, with the blitz, you can create a little bit more extra pressure, a little extra heat, but you put the coverage at a disadvantage. And we saw that on the touchdown that went ahead and, helped the Chargers go ahead at the end of the game. You're bringing the corner and you get a little bit of a mix up in terms of how they want to play a route combination. And before we know it, it's a big explosive play. So those are some of the things with blitzing that kind of makes me a little hesitant, especially with our secondary being a little bit young and having guys that are still learning their way and finding their role. So for me, even though I do think we lean a little bit too heavy on that 4-man rush, if TJ Watt is healthy, I think it's fine because he's that dominant of a player.
Let's talk about Sunday's matchup a little bit. Cincinnati was hot to start the season. They've cooled off a little bit, but still have some powerful weapons in Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Joe Mixon. Bob, what do you make of this Cincinnati team, and how do you compare how they've started the year to how it's going now?
Well, the Bengals, I think they're a perfect team for the way the AFC North has been shaping up this entire season. They look great sometimes, and other times you can't believe they're playing the way they're playing and losing to who they're losing to. When you look specifically at the Bengals, Joe Mixon, in my mind, is the key to that offense. If Joe Mixon is effective running the football, then Joe Burrow, who's not a runner like Justin Herbert or Lamar Jackson or, even Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills quarterback the Steelers played in the opener. So, it's not that he's a statue, but if you get some pressure on him, you pretty much know where you can find him in terms of where he is in the pocket. But if Joe Mixon is effective running the ball, that opens up play action. And the Bengals have a very nice trio of, as Mike Tomlin calls them, eligibles. You have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. And so, again, the Steelers, and this is true for just about every game the Steelers play, the Steelers defense needs to get the opponent in predictable down and distance situations where they kind of have a good idea, what the offense is going to try to do. This way, you can unleash your pass rush. You can unleash some blitzes if that's the way you want to go, and get after the quarterback and maybe force him into mistakes that turn into some takeaways. But if Joe Mixon is running the ball and all of your players have to be conscious of a running play every snap that the Bengals are on offense, you're going to have problems.
Joe Mixon, the big concern for Bob. Wolf, what about you? Mixon is, when he has less than 15 carries, the Bengals are 1-3. So is Mixon the same concern for you, or are you more concerned about Joe Burrow and his arm?
No, I mean, Mixon is tough. Let's face it. I mean, you get some of those hogs up there. They bring in an extra tackle. I think it was Isaiah Prince. They bring him in and they put him out there. They overload one side, leverage it, and you create all these great down blocking angles. And then all of a sudden you got Mixon running on a cutback on the weak side. So there's a lot of things that he can do that some backs are not capable of doing. And with that big beefeater sort of offensive line that the Cincinnati Bengals have, it does create a dynamic that really puts pressure on the edge guys on the defense, because they've got to be able to squeeze and play and hold, set the edge, hold all that stuff like Arthur always talks about, right? Stuff that we never had to bother on the offense, but you on the defense have to. And that's the deal that Joe Mixon can give you, is that ability to cut back and then break some long ones, because he's equally adept at making people miss as he is running them over.
And Jamar Chase has been such a standout for Cincinnati's offense, but in his last 3 games, he's had less than 50 receiving yards. He burnt the Steelers a couple times early in week 3. Arthur, is he still a concern, and what have teams figured out about him to slow him down recently?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about Jamar has shown that he is an elite receiver, even as a rookie. He could run every route that you want him to run, makes the combat catches, has the speed to take the top off the defense. Something that I've been noticing, though, that teams have been trying to do to take away him or minimize his role is they keep the safety over top of him. They're allocating 2 or more defenders to him, and that attention has ultimately helped the run game a lot. I mean, you watch Joe Mixon as he's running against the Raiders, and they're playing too high. They have to because of what Jamar is able to do out there. So with that, it's kind of handicapping what defenses can do against him. But at the same time, I think it's less about him and more about getting that pressure on Burrow. If you get that pressure on on Joe Burrow, that changes all of that dynamic. That changes all of the elongated downfield stuff that Jamar's been able to do at a high level this season. If you keep Joe under duress and not allowing him to get his feet set, not allowing him to go through his progressions to kind of look those guys off, he will continue to struggle that way.
And here is our Week 12 opening lines across the league presented by Unibet Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're in Pennsylvania and are ready to place your wagers on any of this weekend's matchups, download the Unibet PA app or visit pa.unibet.com. All right, coming up next, we're going to be talking about this Steelers offense and what Najee Harris can do to be effective in Sunday's game. Welcome back to the Matchup Show presented by Unibet. Let's bring our panel back in to discuss the Steelers offense. Guys, I want to talk a little bit about Najee Harris. He had 142 scrimmage yards in Week 3 versus the Bengals, but 102 of them came through the air on 14 receptions. Wolf, does it matter how Najee Harris gets his touches? Do you want to see him on the ground a bit more, or do you just want him to get the football?
Well, of course, I want him to get the football, but I love the ground and pound. Let's face it. When you put that rock in his hands, give him an opportunity to have at a defense and start to wear them down a little bit. Arthur will tell you there's nothing more pleasant and like good family fun than having a beat down on the defense. You know, I mean, when you can run them all afternoon and get them tired and they start coming off the ground and they're complaining, they're holding their hands on their hips, they're yelling at each other in the huddle. That's just wonderful. So I love when you get Najee going and see him start working out there. One of the things that's nice is he doesn't just run blindly into piles. You know, when he was in his first couple of games, he was really, you know, the offensive line was struggling. He was struggling, and, you know, that's the way it goes. But as he's been coming on now, his ability to play peekaboo with the linebackers, get him to, like, get into one gap and he'll go in another. Or the effect is he just has quicker reactions in a short area inside tackle to tackle. That and the fact that I love when they pitch the ball to him, then he gets that opportunity to run to the outside behind either Chooks or Danny Moore, who can run. Both those tackles can run and get out there on a corner. It's adding some things to what he's able to do.
And Arthur, we talked a little bit earlier this week about the Steelers' run game against these bad run defenses in Detroit and the LA Chargers. Should the Steelers be doing more to implement the run game, or should they just be taking what those defenses are showing them in the moment?
No, I definitely think that there's something that they should put more emphasis on and try to get more of a focused effort on running the ball, right? I know Wolf was enjoying his slander of defenses and how defenses, you know, can't tackle and they don't want to be physical and all this other stuff. But when it's on our end and, you know, we're talking about Najee, I do agree with those things 100%. But as a whole, though, when you're talking about just the sheer amount of attempts in both of these past games, when you're talking about Najee's usage, to me, he's a guy that the more you feed him the ball, the harder it's going to get on the defense. As a defender, a guy who's played against bigger backs like Najee, it does wear on you. Late in the fourth quarter, when that guy is 20 plus touches, man, that's a load to deal with. And eventually the dam will break. Eventually, you know, you keep churning them 3-4 yards at a time. And then that fourth quarter is when you break the long one. So to me, man, I would love to see Najee get those opportunities. But at the same time, I understand last week's game in terms of the Chargers, the flow of it, I don't think was necessarily available to the Steelers to take that approach. Whereas I do think against the Lions, that was something that they could have done a little bit more.
And Bob, we talked a little bit earlier in the show about opposing defenses figuring out Jamar Chase a little bit. Are you concerned that could happen to Najee Harris and he could hit that rookie wall?
Well, I'm not, you know, my interest is more in establishing a certain tone to the game from the Steelers standpoint. You know, I think they need to go into Cincinnati, be physical with the Bengals, and kind of establish the way that the game is going to unfold. And, you know, because these teams are very familiar with each other. The Steelers have been highly successful against the Bengals in Cincinnati, particularly with Ben Roethlisberger as the quarterback. And, I just think the Bengals won the first game of this home series this season at Heinz Field. So I think it's important for the Steelers to go to Paul Brown Stadium and punch him in the mouth and just, let the Bengals know that, this is going to be a typical Steelers-Bengals game as opposed to the first meeting between the teams, which was really not necessarily one that followed the typical script. And so, when it comes to, do you want Najee Harris to gain most of his yards as a receiver or a running back? For me, I think it's important that the Steelers establish the fact that they are going to run the ball and make the Bengals defense not only respect the run, but anticipate that there are going to be running plays. And then when you do run the ball, as Wolf said, some good family fun, come off the ball, punch them in the mouth, and just keep doing it and see, who flinches first. Because, again, I think that when you look at the first meeting between these teams at Heinz Field, Ben threw 58 passes. That's too many passes. Too many. So you got to get that number down. You got to make the Bengals defense, fill the gaps, take on the blocks, do all those things that we're worried whether the Steelers defense is going to be able to do to stop Joe Mixon. Make the Bengals defense do that to stop Najee Harris.
And let's talk about Ben Roethlisberger a little bit, especially as of late. Against the Chargers, he had a season-high 3 passing touchdowns. And from weeks 5 to 11 in those games that he started, he's had a 104.3 passer rating. Did Sunday's performance and some of his recent starts, guys, we'll start with you, Arthur, give you the confidence that he can really lead this team the rest of the way and lead a comeback if need be?
Yeah, I am starting to be a lot more confident in his abilities, especially when you talk about his play over these past 4 to 5 games, right? He's been clean. He hasn't been turning the ball over. I thought in terms of this Chargers game, he really showed that vintage style of Ben, being able to stretch the field, putting the ball in some tight windows. Some of the throws that he hit to Deontay, the placement on it was spectacular. So to me, seeing that, it definitely makes me feel a lot more optimistic about him, especially down the stretch with some of these, matchups where we got to have it. And it's going to be against some higher end talent. With 7, though, with his ability right now, I don't know if it was the being away for, a little bit over a week, and that's what revitalized him. But whatever it is, he has to keep that going because that makes this offense, that makes this team so much more dangerous when he's playing the way he was playing against the Chargers.
He said 5 straight games without an interception. Knock on wood. We're going to knock on wood on that one, not to jinx it. But yes. Wolf, your thoughts about Ben Roethlisberger's play as of late and your confidence in him moving forward?
There's something about the old gunslinger saddling up, being out all week and people starting to do the naysayers and things of that nature. And I love when Ben comes out and gets it done. He did it last year against Cincinnati, if you recall. He was out, came in, threw 4 touchdowns. Let's go back to 2015 when Landry Jones versus the Browns got knocked out in the first series. He comes off the bench to throw for a club record 380 yards or so. This is what this guy is. He's full of competitive juice, man. You put him in a situation that most people say can't be done, and then let him go because this guy is an ultimate competitor. But here's the point. When he's in the huddle, and I got to tell you, this is the way it was with Terry Bradshaw, the blonde bomber back in the day, even when, he was up in years and stuff like that, still got a little bit of that magic. You believe, and the guys believing that circle him around there in the huddle, that's what it takes, that bonding agent that brings everybody together, and the play just starts to pick up. And Ben is worth points just walking into the huddle with those guys. When you believe what this guy can do and you realize at any point in time, no matter how grim and it looks, he can pull it together and get you into the end zone. And that's what it takes. And that's what he's capable of doing. He's not a Hall of Famer for no reason.
Bob, you a believer in Ben Roethlisberger?
Always have been. And, let me tell you something else about what Ben Roethlisberger can do to help the Steelers on Sunday. We've been talking a lot about stopping Joe Mixon. Ben can handle a lot of that himself.
Right.
Because if the Steelers offense put some points up early, that removes Joe Mixon, the emphasis on Joe Mixon from the Bengals game plan automatically. Because now all of a sudden, Joe Burrow and the Bengals coaching staff, they started looking up at that scoreboard thinking, wow, we can't afford to be running the ball 30 times or 35 times in this game. We got to put up some points, and the way we got to do that is try and throw the ball. And then again, once again, then you've got the Bengals from the Steelers' defensive standpoint. You get the Bengals offense in a predictable kind of situation where you can start trying to do some things to confuse Joe Burrow, to get after Joe Burrow. And so there are a lot of different ways to deal with an opposing team's running game, and scoring points on their defense early is one of the best ways I've ever seen to take care of that.
And it's time now to tell you about Pick and Win, presented by Unibet. Each week, participants can answer a variety of trivia and predictive questions for points. The person with the most at the end of each week wins a prize, and the grand prize at the end of the season to the top points getter is a trip to the Pro Bowl in Las Vegas. It's free and easy to play. Download the Steelers official's mobile app, create a fan profile, and find the Pick and Win banner under the Fan Zone section. Alrighty, that's going to do it for us here, guys. Stay tuned to Steelers.com next Monday for a breakdown of Steelers Bengals on the Extra Point. For Arthur Moats, Craig Wolfley, Bob Labriola, I'm Shelby Cassesse.